At this point, I've extended my schema, prepared my forest and domains. I've installed the prerequisites on my Lync server. I've created and published a topology, and now I'm finally ready to install my Lync server. So the Lync server already has the tools on it. So if I go into all programs under Lync server 2010, I'm going to go into the deployment wizard. And as soon as that loads up, I'm ready to kick off my install. So depending on whether or not you're doing an enterprise or a standard edition deployment, the options that you're going to select here are going to be a little bit different. For example, if it was a small environment and I was doing just a standard edition, then of course I would prepare the first standard edition server at that point. But since I'm doing an enterprise edition pool, I'm going to dive straight into install or update a Lync server system. So let's go ahead and click on that. And then I have a series of steps. So this is a pretty good thing because I need to be able to get a green arrow. You'll see a little tick box come as you up here on the right of each of these steps as you complete each step and whether or not it was successful or not. So if you get something out of sequence when something didn't work, you might have one step missing a green arrow and you might be trying to move on to the next one and you're not sure why it's not working. That's probably because that previous step is incomplete. So keep an eye out for that. But this first one we're going to do is install the local configuration store. So it's going to install an instance of SQL Express locally, and it's going to copy the database information out of the central management store database to that local server. So it's going to kick off kind of that single master replication model that we kind of talked about in a previous video. So this can be time consuming because when you run through this, it's going to have to install SQL Express. But what we'll say here is retrieve the data directly from the central management store. So we're going to be reading it out of the SQL Server database on that back end. And there it goes. So you'll see all kinds of MSI packages go by. You'll see it install SQL Express. And what we'll want to do here is kind of give it a minute, and then we'll come back and finish off the rest of the installation as soon as it's complete. So after about 5 or 6 minutes, step 1 is now complete. So I'm going to go ahead and hit finish. Now it's determining the deployment state, and there's that green arrow I was telling you about. So it shows up just on the left-hand side of the run box. So let's move over to step 2, and this is the actual installation of the Lync server components. So the services itself. So we'll hit run, and then we're just going to go through a wizard. Based off of the topology definition, it's going to install the components required. For example, if I had not defined an AV conferencing role in the topology, the bits for that piece wouldn't be installed here. So it's really reading that topology information and only installing what it needs to at this point. Okay, so step 2 is now completed. That should have put all those services out there on Lync 1 for me. So I'm going to hit finish here. Now, if I actually go look right now, let me pull up the services applet, services.msc. If we take a look, notice we've got all of these Lync server services now installed, but they're not running. They're set to automatic. So in order to start most of these services, I have to have certificates installed on the server because we have mutual TLS between servers. We also have TLS connections coming from clients. So we want to make sure that we have certificates on here before we can start these services. That's actually going to be part of step 3. And this really helps if you have an internal certificate authority, an enterprise certificate authority. I already have one deployed in my environment. The nice thing is if you have that, when you run through step 3, you can do the request of your certificate, the installation, and all of that without ever leaving this wizard. So that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to do a request, and it'll detect that I already have an Active Directory Enterprise Certificate Authority available. So I'll hit next, and I'm going to send that request immediately to an online CA. It's going to select the one that's already out there for me and hit next. Now I'm already logged in with the administrator, the domain administrator account, but if I needed to do alternate credentials here, I could do that. I don't need to do that here. So I'll go ahead and hit next. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the default certificate template and not customize this screen. At this point, I'm ready to give it a friendly name. So I'll call it Lync Front End Pool. Now, I don't need to change these defaults here. If I was doing one that was going to be shared on multiple servers, I might want to mark the certificate's private key as exportable so I could export it and import it on other servers. Don't really need to do that here because I've got that easily available internal enterprise CA. So I'm just going to go with the defaults. Hit next. My organization information. Country, state, city. So let's fill this out. United States, that's Arizona, and we're in Phoenix for this deployment. Click on next. So here's all of the subject and subject alternative names that are going to be on the certificate. So I've got pool.interfacetttlabs.com. That's my enterprise front end pool. And then I've got the rest of those simple URLs, my admin URL, my web services URL. So that's good. Go ahead and hit next here. I just have the main primary SIP domain here. That's interfacetttlabs.com. So I'm good to go there. I don't need any additional names on the SAN certificate, although I could add them here if I needed to. So if I wanted to share this cert with some other websites, it's a possibility I could do that here. Typically, for your internal servers, you won't really need to worry about that. So I'm going to leave this blank and hit next. And this is generating the request. So here's all the information. You can confirm this all looks good here. Hit next. Now it's going to go out and perform that request for you. So there we go. Let's go ahead and hit next. And as you can see here, a certificate with the thumbprint has been added to the local configuration or the local certificate store. So it went out to the certificate authority, grabbed a certificate with that thumbprint. Now it's asking us, if we want to finish this off and assign that to the server. So we can look at the certificate here. This is the one that we just went out and got. And again, if you go over to details, here we've got our subject alternative names, those names that were there on the list. And so again, that's going to be the URLs out of your topology that needs to match in DNS. So let's say, okay, we'll hit finish. Now we're going to assign that certificate to the server, and we'll go ahead and hit finish again. And now that's all completed. So we want to make sure that when we look at this screen, everything looks good. The status is assigned. Of course, the expiration date hasn't passed. From there, we're good. If all that checks out, we should be able to start the services. So I'm going to hit close. Again, we get the green tick, and now we can move on to starting the services. So if you hit run here, that's just a simple start operation. So all of those services we were looking at before, it's going to attempt to start those guys. And as you can see, it's issuing a start operation to all those guys. Once it goes through there, you'll probably want to go and spot check that. There's another step in the deployment wizard that'll bring up the services management utility so you can check that status. And some of them might take some time to start. For example, the Lync front-end server, that's usually the one that takes the longest to start. So you might see that take 2 to 3 minutes to actually start up and enter a running state. All right, so start operation's been issued. Go ahead and hit finish. So on this one, you won't get a green check because it doesn't actually confirm that they started. They want you to do is go ahead and go out here and check it yourself. So as long as you get green ticks through the first 3 steps, it's kind of up to you from there. Now, if a service doesn't start, it'll show up in the application log in the event viewer as to reason why that is. So you might want to keep that in mind, but let's go ahead and hit run here. You'll see that this doesn't do anything special other than launching this service to snap in. So if we go out and look at the Lync services, we've got a few that are starting. Well, we got 2 that are. Oh, that one started. Now we've got the front end that's still trying to start. Application sharing never started. Let me try to make sure that that's going to start up for me. All right, so that's started. Let me do a refresh. Front end is still starting. So even though that was set to automatic, for some reason that one didn't catch. So again, come into this screen, make sure everything looks good. If you can't start a service, maybe you try to start, it won't start. Like I said, check it out in the event log, and that should give you the reason why. But at this point, all services are started now, which is good. So go ahead and close this out. And that pretty much takes you to the end of the setup wizard. So at this point, Lync 1 is now part of the pool infrastructure that we created in our topology. So pool.interfacetttlabs is up and running. Probably the next step from here would be to update servers and kind of do some post-configuration tasks. Then we can get into enabling users for Lync and actually getting connected.